Court will note the appearance of Mr. Padilla on behalf of the plaintiff, Mr. Bailey on behalf of the defendant. This matter is before the court pursuant to the, understanding at the settlement conference that the two issues we're addressing are parenting time and school district. Is that your understanding, Mr. Padilla?
It is, Your Honor. I do have maybe a short question for the court about proceeding on the school.
Okay. Mr. Bailey, is that your understanding of the two issues, the parenting time and the school district issue?
Yes, Your Honor, it is.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Padilla. What did you have?
I think my question is this, Your Honor. It's been asserted that it was proposed, as in proposed previously, as in this is something we've talked about and compromised, negotiated on, that Charlotte Adventist Christian School was the school that Dad was proposing. And I just want to clarify that, because my position on this was that no school in Eaton Rapids or Charlotte or otherwise has ever been proposed up until the point that I received the exhibits on the 22nd of June. It was the defendant in this matter lives in Eaton Rapids. His position was that he wanted the child to go to school in Eaton Rapids. That's where the child was born. That's where the parties live. That mama had moved to Battle Creek, that she should shoulder that burden, essentially. That was the argument that I heard. There was never any proposal about a specific school, especially an Adventist Christian school.
Okay. I guess I'll ask Mr. Bailey, what's your response?
All right. Well, first of all, what Mr. Padilla is talking about is brief discussions that we may have had during mediation. What he's saying right now, we did have the school district issue. We settled assets division, we settled liabilities division, and then we weren't, the parties who have joint legal custody right now were not able to agree on the school for their child, which they anticipate going to school in the fall. So I really not sure I even understand the objection here, because it's not as if we were ever on the record and argued anything. We briefly discussed during negotiations, trying to come up with some kind of a resolution on all issues. And what school the child was going to attend this upcoming fall was not agreed to. So I'm not sure how proper it is for us to talk about negotiations anyway, but we do know that as a fact, the parties don't agree on what school their child's going to go to. So I don't know if it matters if it's a Christian Adventist. That's what my client is proposing. So I don't know what Miss Vic's even proposing right now.
Okay. Well, okay, that's fine. That clarify it for you, Mr. Padilla?
Kinda. I mean, not really. I guess I'm reading the trial brief from Brother Counsel, and it says specifically on page 3 at the bottom in paragraph 2 that the defendant proposed the minor child attend kindergarten at Charlotte Adventist Christian School, and that is untrue. It was never proposed.
Okay. Well, I guess at this point there's a dispute on the school district, and again, so everyone knew that there was a dispute, and I don't know what transpired at mediation. Obviously, it didn't result in a resolution of the case. And I don't know if that is, in fact, something that is possible that we could have resolution. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Padilla? Is there a chance if you had time to discuss this matter, that you could resolve this, or we simply just go ahead with the hearing?
Well, Your Honor, I don't think the fact that the defendant wants the child to go to a Christian school that is based in a faith that neither party, to my knowledge, have ever participated in, I don't think that it's going to make the matter any better. Okay.
Well, it doesn't sound like we have any opportunity to agree, so let's proceed. Mr. Padilla, I'll let you proceed with your opening statement if you have one.
I do, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Your Honor, the issues as presented by the defendant in this case, I would generally agree with that they are twofold. One, that the parties could not agree on where the child will attend school. And two, that the parties were in a disagreement with respect to the type of equal parenting time they would exercise. My client proposed that the parties would deviate from the temporary order that was entered by this court for week-on, week-off parenting time to a schedule that could be beneficial to both parties and the child. Given the age of the child, my client proposed that the parties exercise a 2-2-3 schedule where each party would have like 2 dedicated days of the week, and then they would alternate the weekends. Part of this reasoning and logic for my client was that the child is very young and that an entire week is a long time to spend away from one parent. The other reasoning behind that is that there is about a 35-minute drive between the parties. And so in terms of transporting a child to and from school, that would alleviate either party from having to drive a child to school, every single day of the week. They would have dedicated days like Monday or Tuesday, or, if dad had Wednesday and Thursday. I would also point out that my client's position, is that she wasn't as concerned about the type of school that the child would attend, be it private or public or otherwise. She was most concerned about where the child would attend school. There is a significant age disparity between the parties. The defendant is well established, has a retirement fund, has a pension, has his own business, also collects Social Security and collects money in addition on Social Security for the minor child. On the other hand, Ms. Fick is now going to be a single mom and works full time. She has a second child who has autism, and she's looking to place the child in a school that's close to home for her. If we look at it's a burden on a parent to transport a child to school, no matter how we shake the tree down. But at the end of the day, the defendant is much more capable of providing some transportation if needed for school than the plaintiff is in this case. Plaintiff is proposing that the child would attend Purdy Elementary in Penfield, which is a 35-minute drive by my account on Google Maps from the defendant's home. The reason that she's asking for that to happen, and what I believe you will hear in testimony today, is that she works first shift for Denso Manufacturing, which means that she has to be out of the house in the morning before the child starts school. It's much easier for her to obtain a babysitter, come to the house to sit with the child there to wait for the bus to come, than it is for her to try to figure out how to get the child transported all the way to Charlotte for school in the morning on her days. Likewise, because she works first shift, she can be out and home and be at home by the time the children come home on the bus. In contrast, Your Honor, I anticipate you're going to hear testimony from the defendant that, again, the defendant does have the financial means to do this. He does have the availability and time to do this because he's retired, and he's in a much better position to provide some transportation as it relates to the education of the child. And so my understanding of this is we don't want to fall down this rabbit hole of making an argument of who should shoulder the burden. That's a me argument. That's a what's good for me on these parents' basis. And the reality of the situation, the court needs to make a decision about what's best for this child. And in my opinion, what's best for this child is that both parents be permitted and have the ability to have access and be involved in their child's education. And it seems a little bit selfish to me that the defendant in this case would not step up in this event where the plaintiff is going to be a single mom with 2 children in helping with some of that transportation. So my client is asking that, one, the court, and before I go any further, I guess I have to address this now. Additionally, I anticipate that you're going to hear testimony, Your Honor, that neither one of these parties, at least to my knowledge, are of a Adventist Christian faith. So it is rather peculiar to me that the defendant would choose to enter the child or propose that the child go to a school of which Ms. Fick has no basis or knowledge. I anticipate that if she's asked questions about the Adventist church, there's very little that she can tell you because she's not an Adventist. So even if the child were to attend school in Charlotte, I'm not convinced that putting the child in an Adventist Christian school is appropriate in this case either. So with that in mind, Your Honor, we're asking that the minor child be permitted to attend school at Purdy Elementary, where he's actually already enrolled. He attended preschool there already this year. I will point out that the financial means of this makes sense. The defendant, again, is receiving a pension. he has a retirement fund that he draws off of. Additionally, he collects Social Security in the amount of $1,700 a month, and he gets another $1,200 a month for the minor child in this case on Social Security, which by proxy actually prevents Ms. Fick from receiving any form of public benefit whatsoever. And so she's financially shouldering that at a significant rate at this time, as there is still no support order entered. So again, we're asking that the child be permitted to attend Penfield Elementary School. And we're requesting that the parties move to a 225 schedule, or sometimes referred to as a 223 schedule, based on the child's age and the distance between the parties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bailey, do you wish to make an opening statement or reserve your opening statement?
No, I'll go ahead and make that right now, Judge.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. One thing I agree with counsel who said that this seems to be what's good for me versus what's good for the children or child in this case. And I think that hits that squarely on the head when it comes to the plaintiff, because here's what we know. They were married in 2017 and they lived together continuously until Miss Fick decided to move to Battle Creek in November of 2022, which is about 45 minutes away from where they had been residing, and which is the marital home. My client lives in the marital home. It was his prior to the marriage. He plans to continue to live there. Yes, he does have the financial means to support the child, which is what you'd want. So the question that I would have to raise is, why did you move away 45 minutes? And really the problem that was created is by the plaintiff, because she's moved away. She had a job here. It was a good manufacturing job, and she just left to go live in an area where there's no family support, or really there's nobody there that they could lean on or had any family contacts or anything. So that was problem number one. Now, we went before you, Judge, back the first of the year, arguing about what the parenting time schedule should be, and you ordered that the parenting time would be week on, week off, and that's what it's been since the order's been entered back in January. It's my client's position anyway that the son, who is now 4 years of age, is very well adjusted to that schedule. It makes more sense because of the distance involved to have less transporting for safety reasons and cost and availability. It just makes more sense to have fewer transitions, given that Miss Fick now lives approximately 45 minutes away by moving there. Now, as to the school, again, I think that's where it gets into what's best for Miss Fick, because what I heard counsel say was that she is on first shift, which means she's out and about working before the child is even up. My client's retired. He has no plans of going back to school. So the self-employed are going back to work. The self-employed argument is he's always done. He's some farming on the side. He has no intention of going back to work where there are regular hours. That means that he'll be able to get the child up, get the child ready, get the child to school. If there's any problems at school, the child's hurt, the child's sick, the child needs to go to the doctor, my client's available. I don't think that Miss Fick has that kind of flexibility with her work. My client's also able to get the child from school, and the school is very close. The one that we're proposing is very close, and to where he lives, and he's able to get the child from school. He's able to work with the child after school. He's able to get the child fed and all these different things. Now, Ms. Fick says, well, it's not convenient for me to have to drive all the way over there because I'm going to have to rely on a babysitter. My client doesn't have to rely on babysitters. He's able to do that because he has the flexible schedule to do that. So we're looking at what's best for the child. I believe that it's best for the child to be in a school district that's closer to my client, and because he has the availability and the time and the willingness. It's also important to note that Ms. Fick has been in the manufacturing industry. Those kinds of jobs don't lend themselves well, unfortunately, to what we'd call normal hours, or usually 3 shifts. So during the time they lived together, my client was very responsible. Of course, the child here was not in school at the time, but the older child, the autistic child, was a lot of the responsibility of my client to take care of. So it's not as if he's just kind of come along lately. He's been what we would say is the primary provider of care for these children, this child in particular, really since he retired from DART, which is a couple of years ago. As to the argument about the Christian school, the Christian school, whether you're Adventist or Catholic or whatever it is, the idea more is a private school. Then my client favors a private school over a public school, and he'll explain the reasons why. If the court was inclined to say, I'm more interested in where the child goes in terms of school district versus a particular school, that's fine. If the public school, my client thinks it's in the child's best interest to be in a private school, smaller classrooms, more individual attention. There are some concerns about the child in the learning, perhaps some learning issues that he believes that the private schools will be better able to address those schools or address those challenges. So when it's all said and done, Your Honor, what we'd like to see that happen is we'd like to see the schedule that's been in place for the last going on 6 months, just about 6 months exactly. We'd like to see that schedule stay in place, especially in light of the distances involved. I do agree if Ms. Fick perhaps lived a few miles away, maybe that would be better to have less or to have more contact. But the practical reality is they live a long way away, and that's 45 minutes in good weather. Not that there's a fair amount of construction. It's rural. We have weather conditions in the winter. We have lots of reasons why they should perhaps limit the time the child's being transported. So we would ask that the 7 on, 7 off parenting time schedule remain in place throughout the entire year. And then we'd ask that the child, my client specifically, has produced information regarding Charlotte Adventist Christian School. He's able to afford that. He's able to pay for that and believes it's in the child's best interest. That's what he's going to ask that you order today. But if the court's not inclined to order something in a Christian school, then we'd ask that it be in the school district where he lives.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Padol, you can call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, plaintiff would call Esther Fick, the plaintiff in the suit. Okay. I have some questions that I want to ask you. I'm going to start by asking you, you filed for divorce in this case and moved from the marital home. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think that in opening, at least, that one of the questions your husband at this time, or soon to be ex-husband, will have is, why did you move to Battle Creek? Now he says it's 45 minutes away. Are you 45 minutes away from the defendant?
When I drive, it's about a 35-minute drive for me.
Okay. And where do you work, Ms. Fick?
Denso Manufacturing in Battle Creek.
Okay. And do you work full time there?
Yes, 50 hours.
Were you working full time when you lived with the defendant?
Yes.
Okay.
For 5 months.
Okay. So you were married when?
November 3rd, 2017.
Okay. And there was a period of time for 5 months during the marriage that you worked full time?
Yes. Well, no, I'm sorry. I worked for almost a year, but he was only watching the kids for 5 months. After our babysitter quit, then he retired and began to watch them for 5 months.
Can you give me a timeline on that? Was it like the last 5 months of your marriage that this occurred?
Yes, the last 5 months, yes.
Okay. So in the first few years that you lived together, you weren't working full time?
No, I wasn't working at all. I was a stay-at-home mom full time.
Okay. Is there any particular reason you went to work full time?
Yes, because I knew that Chris was retiring and I wanted to support the family.
Okay. And when you began working full time, where did you go to work?
Shift Group in Charlotte.
Okay. What did you do there?
Parts assembling, manufacturing.
When did you leave that job?
It was November of 2022.
So that was after you filed for divorce?
I filed for divorce first, I believe.
Okay. So you left the job after you filed for divorce, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And can you tell me why you left that job?
It didn't pay very well. I wanted something a little better.
What was the work environment like?
It wasn't that great.
So you were looking for a better place to go that was still in manufacturing?
Yes.
And so you landed a job at Denso?
Yes.
Okay, where is that job located?
It's on Denso Road.
Is that Battle Creek?
Yes.
Okay. Is that why you moved to Battle Creek, to be closer to the job?
Yes.
Okay. Suppose it wouldn't make much sense to take an extra $1 an hour if you had to drive an extra hour a day, would it?
No.
Are you currently receiving any child support?
No.
And how many, who lives in your home?
Myself and my 2 children.
Okay. And how old are the children?
9 years old and 5 years old.
And are they attending, well, they probably aren't attending school in the summer, but were they attending school? Were they enrolled in school at the end of the school year last year?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Okay, so real quick, and I know you're on the phone and this might be a challenge, but it's really important for you to maybe put a little second or 2 pause in between when you answer the question and when I ask it. That way you hear the full question before you answer, okay?
Okay.
So the children were, did you enroll the children in Battle Creek when you moved last school year?
Yes.
Okay, and your 9-year-old son, where does he go to school?
It's Dudley STEM in Battle Creek.
Okay, what type of school is that?
It's just like a kindergarten, or I'm not sure exactly what they call it.
Is it a primary school, primary elementary school?
Yeah.
Okay. Would your children be attending the same school this upcoming school year if they were to enroll in Battle Creek?
Yes.
Okay. So I know you and me talked about this. I can't offer testimony, Ms. Fick, so I need you to explain in a little bit of detail about the logistics of what kind of roadblocks are going to pop up if your youngest child were to attend school in Charlotte, Michigan. Well, that's a really broad question. I'm going to strike that. Sorry. What is your current work shift schedule?
It is 5:15 a.m. to 3:45 p.m.
So presumably you're going to have a babysitter at the house in the morning so the children can get on the bus?
Yes, that is what I've been doing.
And you'll be home by the time they get home and off the bus?
Your Honor,
yes.
at this point, I want to place an objection. Counsel is asking several leading questions. That last one in particular was a leading question. I try to let this go through so we have maybe goes through a little more quickly, but I would object to the leading questions and ask that they not be asked going forward.
Okay, well, the court will sustain the objection, but again, recognize, I think Mr. Padilla was simply trying to, at least on some preliminary matters, presumably weren't objectionable, was asking leading, but if you can, Mr. Padilla, stay with direct questions.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Fick, what else can you, well, one second, Your Honor. So Ms. Fick, you just described to me basically what your daily schedule is going to look like. Is that fair?
Yes.
If the child were to attend school in Battle Creek?
Yes.
What would you need to do if the child were to attend school in Charlotte?
I would probably lose my job because there's no way that I can drive him unless I paid someone to do it, and I can't afford that.
What can you tell me about the Adventist religion?
All I really know about them is that they worship on Saturday not familiar with the religion that much.
Are you comfortable sending your child to a school that has a religious beliefs and background that you're not familiar with?
No.
Did the defendant come to you and talk to you about sending the child to a Christian-based, or I specifically an Adventist Christian-based school prior to coming to trial?
I never knew that it was an Adventist school. I do remember him saying that he did want the child to go to school in Eaton Rapids, and I didn't think that that was a good school district, so I did not, approve of it, because my previous, when I lived there, my oldest son went to Eaton Rapids school, and they did not treat him well, so I was not, in favor of him going to Eaton Rapids school district.
I'm sorry, Ms. Fisk, you said Eaton Rapids.
That's what was brought up to me, yes.
I'm not a geography major, but I'm pretty sure Eaton Rapids and Charlotte are two separate places, are they not?
Yes, they are.
So to be clear, then, has Mr. Fick ever come to you, approached you about child attending a Christian school in Charlotte?
Not that I'm aware of. I only heard Eaton Rapids.
You're proposing Purdy Elementary School, is that right?
Yes.
What can you tell me about that school? Anything?
Well, I looked into a little bit of the history. They have really good reviews and really good, overall, what do I want to say? Teachers have good reviews. I'm not real familiar with all the literature, but from what I can see of it, they have, really good reviews and stuff like that.
Do you know anything about Charlotte Adventist Christian School? Can you tell me anything about it?
No, I don't. This is the first I've heard of it, so I don't know anything about it other than that it's a religious thing.
It has been suggested, Ms. Fick, that your current husband is retired and that he kind of just farms part-time. Is that true?
I would say his farming is more full-time with the equipment that he purchased and the hours he puts in. Yes, and I was involved in the helping of that while we were married, so I would say it's pretty much full-time.
So your position is that Mr. Fick is working, he's basically retired, but he's taken on a full-time job as a farming.
Yes.
Okay. How much rough estimate would you say he's bought in farming equipment over the course of the last few years?
Around 150,000.
Ms. Fick, why are you proposing an alternate equal parenting time schedule? What's wrong with week on, week off?
Well, because my child is so young, and I feel like, he needs to, see both his parents, equally more often. I know for me, it's hard to not see him for a week, and I believe that it's been hard on him as well.
Ms. Fick, I looked up the distance between, well, where's your husband live? I just want to verify this.
Eaton Rapids.
Okay, and the school that you're proposing is Purdy Elementary School, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's technically located where?
Penfield.
Okay. If I look that up, it tells me 29.8 miles. Does that sound right to you?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any discussions with Mr. Fick prior to leaving the home about the child attending school?
Yes, a few.
Okay. Tell me about how those conversations went.
I had mentioned that he needs to be enrolled in either Head Start or preschool, but he had no desire to enroll him and kept putting it off and said that he wanted to wait until the next school year. I was working, and I just kind of, was putting it in his hands to enroll him, but he didn't. So when I moved to Battle Creek, then I enrolled him in preschool.
And your son is currently 4, is that right?
He is 5 now.
He is 5 now. So is he going to be attending kindergarten or young 5s?
He's going to be in kindergarten.
Okay. What can you tell me about from a financial, because, you know, I know that the issues are presented as where the child will attend school, but there's no current child support order. Is that right?
Right.
I know I came onto the case kind of right after the temporary order that went into place took place. Is that right?
Yes.
And that temporary order indicates that the parties were going to get a child support order entered. Has that happened?
No.
Okay. So there is no current child support order in place yet.
Correct.
Have you applied? What is your current income, Ms. Fick?
Weekly.
How much do you make an hour?
22.
Okay. And you work at least 40 hours a week?
Yes.
Okay. Have you applied for any assistance, either be it for daycare or for, you know, to help with food or to pay for a sitter or any? Have you applied for assistance?
I have tried, but I have not been approved because of the Social Security benefit that Christian Fick is receiving for David.
David, the minor child?
Yes.
Okay. And how much is he receiving for that child?
$1,200 a month.
So your testimony is that you would prefer the child to go to Battle Creek schools because the child can ride the bus. Is that right?
Your Honor,
Yes.
objection to these leading questions.
Sustained.
I'll rephrase, or I'll withdraw your. You may have answered this, Ms. Fick, but did you tell me how much he receives for David?
Yes, I did. It's $1,200 a month.
Okay. And to your knowledge, does Mr. Fick also receive a separate Social Security benefit in the amount of $1,700?
Yes.
Does he have any other source of income?
His 401k.
Does he have a pension? Do you know of?
I don't think so.
Income from farming?
Yes.
Sure, he doesn't have a pension?
I'm really unsure of that question. I'm sorry.
Okay. I have no further questions at this time for the witness, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Bailey, cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Fick, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
When you were living in the, we'll call it the marital home, which was Mr. Fick's home prior to the marriage, but where you were living, you lived there continuously from the date of marriage until you separated in November of 2022. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
And at the time you left in November of 2022, were you employed at that time?
I had already put my 2 weeks in.
So you resigned or voluntarily quit. Is that correct?
Resigned where?
From your employer in Charlotte. In other words, you weren't laid off or fired. You voluntarily left?
Yes, correct.
And did you tell Mr. Fick that you were putting in your 2-week notice, so ending your employment, or was that something that you did on your own?
I did it on my own for my own reasons.
Okay. And at the time, did you have a job lined up in Battle Creek?
Yes.
Did you explain to Mr. Fick that you were going to be moving to Battle Creek?
No, I did not.
So would it be fair to say that you left the marital home and moved to Battle Creek without his knowledge?
Yes.
And how many places have you lived in Battle Creek since you moved in November?
1.
It's the home you're currently living in?
Yes.
Is that a home or apartment, a trailer? What is it that you're living in?
It's a home.
Okay. Do you rent it or do you own it?
I rent it.
And you had testified that it's you and your older son and David that live there with you. Is that correct?
Yes.
And David will be starting kindergarten. And do you know what his hours would be if he went to Purdy Elementary as you're proposing?
It's going to be from like, I haven't, heard from his bus transportation, but from what I gathered from what the school was saying, it was going to be around 8:30 to like 3:45.
And you mentioned a bus. So you're saying that there is a bus that has a route at or near where your house is that your son would be eligible to be on?
Yes.
Would your oldest son also be on that bus to go to and from school?
I believe so, but like I said, I have not heard from the bus schedule, so I can't say for sure, but more than likely, yes.
Do you have any plans to move from your current residence to somewhere else?
No.
And how far is Purdy Elementary from where you're currently living?
2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yes, roughly 2 minutes.
And how far is Purdy Elementary from where you work?
About 10 minutes.
Now you're in the manufacturing, is that correct?
Yes.
And you indicated that your shift starts at 5:15 a.m.?
Yes.
How long have you been on this shift that you just described?
Since November 29 of 2022.
Do you have any reason to believe that your shift is going to change in the near future?
Yeah, it could possibly be less hours.
Okay. But you would basically continue working first shift. Is that correct?
Yes.
I thought I heard, and I want to make sure I am clear on this, but you typically during a week would work approximately 50 hours per week. Is that correct?
Overtime is 50. It's normally 40 hours.
Overtime would be anything over 40, but do you typically work overtime?
Not regularly.
Okay.
But yeah, about every other week, yeah.
And what time do you have to leave your house to get to work at 5:15 a.m.?
About 4:40 a.m.
And so who currently comes to your home to care for the children while you go to work?
Her name is Shannon. She is a friend of mine.
So how does that work with Shannon? What does she do each day?
She comes in the mornings, usually just sits on the couch on her computer until the kids wake up, and she gets them prepared for school.
Well, I'm talking about this summer. Is Shannon still coming over this summer?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, Shannon will continue to come over to your house during the school year?
Yes.
You've cleared that with her, and she's committed to doing that this coming school year?
Yes, she seems to be committed.
How far does Shannon live from you?
About 15 minutes.
Does Shannon have any children or other employment?
She is a nurse that is retired because of she had a little health problem, but she is not employed anywhere else.
So she's able to provide this coming to your house on a regular basis.
Yes.
Is she the only one that provides any care for your children, or is there somebody else that will occasionally come to your house?
Occasionally, if she's not feeling well, I do have somebody else.
Who?
A friend, which is probably not going to be doing it anymore. His name was Peter. So
Peter was providing this care if Shannon wasn't available, or was there a time when Peter provided that care on a full-time basis?
It was just for emergencies.
And who is Peter?
A friend of mine.
So do you have somebody else lined up if Shannon is not able to provide the care when you go to work?
I do have other people lined up, yes, that I'm talking to about it.
So when you say you're talking to them about it, you really don't have them right now. You're just trying to line other people up.
I do have someone that is very interested in the job for emergencies, yes.
Do you work Monday through Friday?
Usually, yes.
Do you ever work past 3:45 p.m.?
No, no,
Do you ever start earlier than 5:15?
no,
Do you have any reason to believe that you're going to be changing employment anytime soon?
no.
What is the difference in your rate of pay at Denso versus what your rate of pay was when you were in Charlotte or Eaton Rapids living in the marital home?
The hourly rate is $6 different.
Okay. And I guess you have done some research regarding Purdy Elementary. Tell me again, what do you know about that school?
It has really good ratings. And when we
Ratings
visited the
where?
school,
Where did
like,
you?
it has 5 stars.
Five
sorry,
stars where?
In the school.
On what did you research that would show it was 5 stars?
Mostly the internet, but we had the meeting at the school with David and the teachers, and it just had, really good background and really good ratings from what I could tell.
Okay. You did meet with David's potential teacher?
Teachers and principals and all of that, yes.
When did you meet with them?
It was back in, I'm going to say, May.
Okay. May, just a few months ago or a month and a half ago?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember what one of the teachers' names would be?
They haven't placed him in a class yet. Like, I don't know which class he's going to be placed in yet, so I do not know what his actual teacher's name is going to be.
Okay. Does your son have any special needs, any learning disabilities, or do you have any concerns about any special needs?
No.
Would you describe your son as developmentally normal for a 5-year-old?
Yes.
So with your current employment, how would the routine work in the mornings for school with you not there? What would Shannon or somebody else be responsible for doing?
Dressing the children and making sure they get on the bus safely.
Okay. And how far is the bus stop from your home?
It comes right to the driveway.
So Shannon or somebody like Shannon would get your child up, get your child dressed, fed, presumably, and off to the bus so that he could get on the bus and go to school.
Yes.
And your oldest son, I wasn't clear, he would not be getting on that bus?
Well, like I said, I have not heard from the bus scheduling yet for the fall year. But
would your son,
I believe.
Okay. Would your oldest son have a different schedule than what David would have?
It's pretty much been the same.
Pretty much, or is the same?
Well, like I said, when they were going to school in the spring, it was the same. But, it could fluctuate a little, for the fall year.
So would it be fair that you're unsure what the schedules would be?
I guess so.
Now, if something happened where David was sick, for example, and couldn't go to school, would Shannon stay with him throughout the day?
Yes, or I would leave work.
Okay. And let's say that David got sick at school. Would you be able to leave work? Is that something that your employer allows for you to do, to leave work?
Yes, we have our vacation and we have our your time and hours that we can leave for emergencies and things.
And when you were living in the marital home, it sounds like neither you or Christian were very impressed with the schools in Eaton Rapids. Is that fair?
Yes.
And if you had continued to live in the marital home or in the area, had you discussed perhaps having the schools for both your children be Charlotte versus Eaton Rapids?
I think I did mention that to Chris. My older son was going to Potterville. I actually took him out of Eaton Rapids school because the district was so bad and moved him to Potterville School. So yes, I had mentioned that I was not comfortable with Eaton Rapids School District.
And apparently Christian agreed with you, correct?
I'm not sure on that because the last I heard, he wanted David to go there. That's what he told me over the phone once.
Your recollection is that Chris told you he wanted David to go to Eaton Rapids. When did that conversation take place?
I'm going to say it was back in January or February. I do believe that recently he has realized that it's not a good school district, but as of then, that's what he was telling me, that he wanted him to go to Eaton Rapids.
So if you had lived in the, if you had continued to live in the Eaton Rapids area, you would not have necessarily been imposed to a school in Charlotte. Is that true?
No, I would not have been opposed to it.
So you're opposed to the Christian school, but not necessarily a public school in Charlotte. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know anything about the Charlotte Adventist school?
I don't know a whole lot about it because this is all new to me, but I will say that I'm not comfortable with the religion from what I know about it, which is very little, but I'm not a Seventh-day Adventist and I don't want my son to be.
Okay. Are you opposed to a private school versus a public school?
Not necessarily, no.
Not necessarily opposed?
No.
Okay. Now, you had testified that that in your opinion, at least, Christian was perhaps working full-time on the farm. Do you recall testifying that way?
Yes.
Would you have any concerns that Christian would be able to get up and get your child to school on time?
I don't know. I mean, I know that he did it in the past. So
he did it with your oldest son, right?
Yes, I would say that he is able to do it.
And would you have any concerns that he could put his farming responsibilities aside to be able to pick up your child and from school?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do you have any concerns that he would be able to put his farming responsibilities aside and be able to be available for your son when he gets out of school?
I mean, I would hope that he could.
Okay. Is Charlotte closer to where you live than Eaton Rapids?
Yes.
How much closer?
I'm going to say about 10 minutes closer.
So if your child went to school in Charlotte, instead of that being a 35-minute drive for you, would it be a 25-minute drive?
Probably. I'm not sure. I would have to look at the map.
Okay. Well, you said earlier that the drive to Chris, where what was the marital home, that's about 35 minutes from where you live, right?
Well, I take the highway, so yeah.
Okay. So if he moved 10 minutes closer, would that make sense that it would be 25 minutes?
I would say so.
Okay. So if the child was in Charlotte, your drive would be 25 minutes. If the child is in Battle Creek, it would be 35 minutes for Christian to drive to school. Does that sound right?
Something like that.
And does Shannon have a driver's license?
Yes.
Would she be unwilling to drive and take on the responsibilities for if the child went to school in Charlotte?
Yes, I would, like I said earlier, I would have to pay her a lot, and I know she's not willing to do that.
You've actually discussed that with her?
Yes.
And she said she's not willing to do that, or she's not willing to do that unless she got paid more.
She would want more pay, and I cannot afford it.
How much do you pay her right now?
$400 a week.
My understanding is you're not opposed to continuing a 50-50 schedule, but you don't want it to be week on and week off. Is that accurate?
Preferably no.
Preferably not week on, week off?
Right.
Do you agree that since January of 2023 that the two of you have followed the current order and have exercised week on, week off?
We have.
So you want to change that schedule, that you've been doing for about 6 months. Is that true?
Yes, I think it would be better for everybody.
Okay. Better for everybody. How about better for your son?
Better for him and the both of us.
And you plan to continue to live 35 to 40 minutes away during good weather? Wouldn't that be a lot of traveling for your son?
If he went to school in Charlotte, yeah.
Well, wouldn't it be a lot of traveling for your son if he went to school in Battle Creek area?
Well, I would say on Chris's week, yes.
A couple more questions, Ms. Fick. Your attorney has represented that you're on a 2-2-3 schedule. What does that mean exactly?
It means that we have him for 3 days of the week, and then the other party has him for 3 days, and then we alternate the weekends.
Okay, so let's put real days on them. Are you saying that the schedule would rotate every week? So one week it'd be 3 and another week it'd be 3, and you're never really sure what days the child is with you versus Mr. Fick? What does that actually look like?
For me, I look at it as Chris would have like Monday, Tuesday, and then I would have, or I'm sorry, he would have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then I would have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we would like alternate it. I'm not sure exactly how the 2-2-5 schedule is exactly.
Okay. So the schedule that you're proposing, you're not really sure what that actually would look like.
I'm not sure what the 2-2-5 is, but I wanted something similar to where my son would, have 3 days with me or like 3 days with his dad. And, that way we're not spending a whole week away from our son and missing a whole week of, his life. It's really difficult like that. I'm not really happy with the schedule. I want him, to be able to spend equal time with his parents, but not in such a long stretch.
Okay. So you're not really sure what schedule you're proposing, just one that's not a week with one and a week with the other.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. What I'm getting here is the two of you haven't really had much in way of conversations about the school for David. Would that be fairly accurate?
Yes.
Do you think that would be a good idea to be able to communicate about school with Mr. Fick?
Yes, it would be, and I've wanted to try to work something out for, the school, but he's been unwilling to talk to me about it. So, because the last thing I heard from him was that he was going to let, the lawyers settle it. So,
when you say he'd be unwilling to talk about it, you mean he's unwilling to consent to your son going to Battle Creek?
We haven't even talked about it. Okay. I tried to talk about it and over the phone, and what he said to me was that he wanted David going to Eaton Rapids because he thought that was the best thing for him.
He thought that was in David's best interest to go to Eaton Rapids?
Yes, that's exactly what he said to me on the phone.
Okay. And that was back in January of 2023, to the best of your recollection?
Yes.
And is that the last conversation you've had about school with Mr. Fick?
I believe so.
Okay. Have you looked into a school perhaps that's in the middle of where you reside and where Mr. Fick resides?
I have not.
Okay. Would that be something that you may want to look at to see if there's a kind of a midpoint for both of you?
I don't know how that would work out. It seems like it would be really complicated, but
what do you mean?
Perhaps we could. Usually the child goes to school in the school district where the town that he lives in, and getting him there still would be a challenge, even if it was halfway, because I have to work in the morning.
It'd be a challenge for you.
Yes, because I have to work mornings.
Okay. All right, no further questions.
Okay. Mr. Padol, any redirect?
Just a couple questions, Your Honor. Ms. Fick, you were asked to talk about a 223 or a 225 type of schedule, and it sounds to me like maybe you don't exactly recall exactly what that schedule looks like. Is that fair?
Yes, I don't remember like how many days it was before the next parent got the child, like, but
so
yeah.
So when you came to me and said, "Hey, judge ordered week on, week off," were you happy or unhappy with that current schedule?
I was unhappy with it.
Okay, and what was the primary reason for you being unhappy with it?
Well, I thought it was hard on David to be away from, you know, his mom for a week and perhaps his dad for a week as well. I thought it was a really long stretch for a 5-year-old.
And did I propose a different schedule to you that would maintain equal parenting time?
Yes, you did.
Okay, and did I refer to it as a 223?
It was either 223 or 225. I don't remember, you know, what the exact name of it was.
But the general understanding that you had was that it would reduce the amount of time that the child spends away from the parent.
Exactly, and that's what I was looking at.
Okay. One more question for you. I just want to shore this up. I'm not sure if you were understanding the question or not. So you were asked by Mr. Bailey whether or not you were opposed to, if the child were attending a public school in Charlotte versus the private school, like if that would alleviate your concern. You remember that question?
Yes.
Okay. He specifically asked you if you were opposed to David attending school in Charlotte, and you said no, you weren't opposed to the child attending school in Charlotte. Is that true?
Well, I did say that because I don't know a lot about the Charlotte School District and all that, but I haven't necessarily heard anything bad about it. I'm not sure.
Well, were you referring to it like because I think he did it in the context of like if you still lived in Eaton Rapids?
If I lived in Eaton Rapids, no, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it. Because like when I lived in Eaton Rapids, I was definitely not planning on sending him to Eaton Rapids, so I would have been open to other options. Okay.
But now that you're in Battle Creek, you're not opposed to the child going to school in Charlotte?
I am because
like
why?
I said,
I'm not.
Tell me why,
I'm not real familiar. Huh?
Tell me why you're opposed with Charlotte School. The number one reason why you're opposed with this school, Mr.
I just don't know anything about the district, I guess.
Well, first of all, it's the Christian school, correct? You don't know anything about Christian school. Okay, so what if it's public school? Are there any other barriers? I know you answered some of these questions, right? You talked about the increased cost, something along that line about your babysitter having to drive the child to Charlotte?
Yeah, and I have no one that would do that.
So again, I'm going to ask you, because the judge has to be clear on this. He's taking notes. You can see on Ms. Fick, you either are or you are not opposed to Charlotte schools.
I guess I'm not, but like I said, I have no idea about the district.
Okay. So what happens if the judge orders that the child goes to Charlotte? Are you going to be happy or unhappy with that?
Unhappy.
Okay. I'm having a hard time with this, Ms. Fick. I'm not sure you understand the question. I don't know how on one hand you can be unhappy if the judge makes a decision that the kids go to Charlotte, but on the other hand, you're telling me you're not opposed to the child going to Charlotte.
Well, I'm going to be unhappy because how in the world am I supposed to get him to school when I have to work mornings? So that's why I'm going to be unhappy with it. Okay, I'm not saying that it's a bad school district.
Okay, so what I think I hear you say, and this is important, Ms. Fick, and I'm not trying to attack you, okay, but what it sounds like you're saying is you're not opposed to the school per se. In other words, Charlotte School, public school, is not necessarily a good or bad school. You don't have any opposition to the fact of the nature of the school. It's more about the feasibility of getting the child to and from school.
Your Honor, objection to leading questions.
I'm just asking for clarification, Your Honor.
I think he's trying to get clarification, so I'll allow it.
Ms. Fick, you can answer the question. Do you want me to, do you need me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Okay. So what I'm understanding from you is that you're not opposed to Charlotte School District itself, like Charlotte School District's a bad school district. You don't know anything about it. Is that fair?
Yes, that's correct.
You're opposed to the school district because of the logistics behind getting the child to and from school.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
And do you rest at this point, Mr. Padol?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Mr. Bailey, call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I would call my client, Christian Fick, as a witness. And is that a home or an apartment?
It's a home.
And how long have you lived there?
Since 1999.
And when did you separate from, or when were the two of you separated?
November 1st, 2022.
Okay. And during the marriage, did you live in that home continuously?
Yes.
Do you have any plans to move?
No.
And what is your current employment?
I'm retired.
When did you retire?
June 1st of 2022.
And are you working anywhere else right now?
No.
Do you have any plans for going back into the employment field?
No.
Now,
I will correct that. I have done a side job of hay. I paid like $375.
Okay.
So,
are you farming right now?
I do a hobby farming. Yeah. I have a few cattle and some chickens.
Okay. You call it hobby farming?
Yeah, because it's really something to keep you busy. And the amount of money you get just kind of basically covers the cost.
Cost of what?
Your fuel, feed, things like that.
Okay. And how long do you, or how much do you work each week typically on the farm?
Farm related stuff.
Well, anything farm related.
10 to 15 hours a week.
Are you able to choose the hours?
For the most part, yes.
Is there anything about your farming responsibilities that would prevent you from providing the care for David?
No.
Would there be anything in your farming duties that would prevent you or hinder you from getting your son to and from school?
Not at all.
And there's some discussion about your income. So let's clear that up. What is your income right now? What sources of income do you have?
I get $1,700 from Social Security. I don't consider David's Social Security check mine. I put it in a savings account for him. It goes basically towards the tutor that comes out, and that's the only money I've taken out of that account. The other monies that I have are either tied up in real estate or my 401, which is in a savings.
Okay. Do you have a pension?
No.
Did you ever have a pension?
No.
And when you say your other money is tied up into real estate, do you have rental properties?
No.
Okay.
It's just farmland that I have purchased.
And that farmland that you purchase is where you actually do what you described as hobby farming?
Yeah, but I do have 40 acres in the UP. It's been barren now for 2 years. And 2 acres that I inherited from my father that's in the UP also.
We're more concerned in asking about income derived from property.
There's no income coming from those properties.
All right. Now, what is the current parenting time schedule that you've been exercising?
7 on, 7 off.
And how long have you been doing that?
Since the judge ordered it in January, I believe.
January of 2023?
Yes.
Have you continuously exercised that schedule?
Yes.
And in your opinion, how is that schedule working out for David?
I think it works out pretty good for David. David has not basically complained about it. And for me, the less time on the road is probably more safe and beneficial to the both of us.
How far is it from where you reside to where you have to transport David for the exchanges?
Depending on the traffic conditions and weather, it could be as much as 45 minutes. Right now, they have a stretch of, I believe it's 70, I'm trying to think, let's see, 78 or 79 coming out of Charlotte, going to Battle Creek that is totally shut down. So you have to take a freeway and then you have to do some cutting back and forth through the country. to be able to get around to the northeast end of Battle Creek where Esther lives.
Okay. So if there wasn't all this construction that you're describing, what would the typical distance be in good weather?
In good weather, probably could do it in 35 minutes. Yeah,
So
I don't speed, so
you heard Miss Vic say 35 minutes. So you're generally in agreement?
yeah, basically.
Okay. And in what city do you live in right now?
I live in the country, but my address is Eaton Rapids.
Okay. And you heard the schedule that Miss Vic proposed, some kind of a 2-2-5 or 2-2-3 schedule. Is that true?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Okay. Is that something the two of you talked about in terms of modifying schedule?
Very little. She brought it up, and I did not think that it was something that sounded like it was doable.
What do you mean?
Seemed a lot of running up and down the roads.
Are you opposed to that kind of schedule?
Yeah.
What would you like to see the schedule be going forward?
I would like to see it stay the same.
Okay. Do you believe that your son has adjusted to that schedule?
I believe so, very much so.
Okay. And tell us why you're opposed to a schedule such as what Miss Vic is proposing.
Well, like you say, it seems like, I'm not saying that the roads are totally dangerous, but every time you put yourself back out on the road, you're adding more, putting yourself in a higher percentage of things happening, whether it's car wrecks, deer, anything running out in front of you. So that's, and I got to tell you, it takes a lot of time away from your child if you're spending it all on the road.
Okay. Now, your son is going to start kindergarten this year. Is that right?
That is what we're proposing.
Okay. Is there any reason? Apparently, you're both in agreement. Is there any concerns about starting school this fall for David?
Well, Esther shared with me that the Head Start that he was in said that he was not ready for kindergarten. So I kind of questioned that, but on the same hand, she said there was tests, but I never really got any tests. But it seems that now suddenly he is ready, and there may have been a question as to whether he was ready. But with the tutoring and stuff that I had brought into my home 5 days a week for approximately an hour, he's been catching up quite a bit. So I assume that he's going to be ready.
Tell us about this tutoring. What do you mean? What do you do?
I have a lady come in, and she's my sister. She works with him for 1 hour a day, usually between 10 and 11 in the morning, working with his ABCs and his numbers. And as of, I believe it was last Thursday, he started writing his name by himself. So Thursday and Friday, I mean, it's a little rough looking, but these are some of the advances that we have made with him.
When you say we, who are you referring to?
Well, I'm talking about my sister, but that is not where it ends, because later in the day, I will do a small class with him also. Kind of I call it a refresher or whatever. The fact matter is I was trying to get another tutor to come in because I really feel like he needs a little more.
Right. So you're willing and able to work with him on educational needs?
Yes.
Would you have any concerns about your ability to get your son up in the morning and get him to school?
No.
Would you have any concerns about your ability to be available for him after school?
No, but we're talking about in my area. I mean, if we're talking about getting up and making sure that he has to go all the way to Battle Creek, you're talking about having him up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
Is Charlotte closer to mother's residence than Eaton Rapids?
Yes.
Right. Now we'll talk about that in a minute. But had you both agreed that if she had remained in Eaton Rapids, that your child would not go to Eaton Rapids, or was that open for discussion?
Well, that was open for discussion. And the reason why Esther got upset with Eaton Rapids is because Eaton Rapids schools decided that they wanted to take on autistic children. And I think they soon found out real quick that they were not ethically set up for it. So he was kind of getting thrown to the wayside.
Right. So my question, though, is if you had remained together, would you have considered other options other than Eaton Rapids?
We may have.
Okay. Now, Ms. Fick indicated that you guys had a discussion in January about perhaps David starting in Eaton Rapids. Do you recall that conversation?
Yeah, I was trying to give her some options, whether Eaton Rapids or Charlotte School, to make it easier.
You know, when did you separate? When did she leave the marital home?
November 1st.
And
22.
At the time that she left, had she given you any indication that she would be leaving?
No.
How did you find out that she left?
She said she was going to the store. And
I'm going to object to relevance.
Mr. Bailey, what's relevant?
Well, I think it's relevant that the kind of the happenstance of moving from the marital home and the residence in the nearby area to go live in a completely unrelated area like Battle Creek.
I'll allow a little bit, but I think if again we stray from that, it would be irrelevant.
All right, so I'm going to ask more specific questions so we don't get off into tangents here. My question is did you know she was planning to move when she left? Did you know when she was planning to move to Battle Creek?
No.
Did she leave? Was she employed at the time she left in Eaton Rapids?
As far as I do, yes.
She was going to work?
Yes.
Did she ever explain to you why she was moving to Battle Creek?
No, only speculation. And
not. I don't want speculation. I'm asking if she told you.
No, she did not. Only after she left it, she said she had a job at Denso.
Okay,
but I didn't know anything about this prior to her leaving.
So you learned all of this after she left.
Correct.
Now let's talk about the school. You were telling me that you worked with him and you think he's, from all indications, he's going to be going to kindergarten in the fall of 2022, correct?
Correct.
Are there any special learning disabilities with David that you're aware of?
Not necessarily, only that because of what's transpired over the last couple of years that David is behind, and that is basically the reason why I brought a tutor in, is to try to catch him up.
Does that seem to be helping?
Quite a bit.
Okay.
But I will say that it seems like every other week nothing has really transpired. Even when he was going to the Head Start school, it seemed like we were always starting where we left off. You know, wherever we were in the line of the ABCs or the numbers. So I'm not sure what was going on with the other school, but I just felt like it must have been more of a daycare than a learning center.
Okay. Now, what is your proposal for school for your son this fall?
Well, my proposal is to submit his application to the Advent Christian School. I'm not a member of the church.
Okay, so let me stop you. I can ask questions. We don't need to go necessarily into summaries here. And where is that school in relation to where you live? How far away is it?
It's probably 10 minutes.
Have you gone to the school and spoken to anyone at the school about the curriculum or anything?
Yes.
And when did you do that?
That would have been early May because I presented that idea with Esther when I dropped David off.
All right. So let me stop you. You have had a conversation with Esther about this school?
Yes, I have.
And when was that?
It would have been in early May.
2023?
Or 23, yes.
So just a month or so ago.
Yeah.
Did she seem open to the idea of discussing it?
Not at all.
Did she state that her opposition had anything to do with the fact that it was a Christian school?
No, I gave her a slip of paper that had the phone number and the name of the place and the name of the teacher director of the place. And her comment was, "What do you want me to do with that?" And I says, "I would like you to call them and possibly do like I did and go to the school and check it out." And she says, "I have no interest." And I thought she was going to throw it on the ground. So I just took the number and the name of the place from her hand and stuck it in my pocket. I didn't want a incident because I could see that things were looking like they were going to start blowing up. So.
All right. Now, we have in our trial brief and in our exhibits attached documents from Charlotte Adventist Christian School. Is that true?
Yeah.
And where did you get that?
I got it from the director from that school.
Okay. And when did you meet with the director from that school?
Would have been late April or early May, like that. I don't have an exact date.
So does what we've attached to our brief as exhibit, I believe it's maybe exhibit B on our brief, but that's what you got as far as information from the school?
Yes, she was able to send me graphs, and
who's she?
That would be Mrs. Felisa Clements.
Is she the director?
Yes, and teacher.
Yes. Your Honor, I believe that was attached as exhibit B. In the exhibit package, they were each individually, each thing from the school was individually marked as an exhibit. I think it might be easier to just have it as one exhibit, and it would move for the admission of it.
Again, I will just renew my argument. It's being propagated here that it was proposed to Ms. Fick, back in May. And I'm very well aware of the court rule regarding mediation and not bringing that stuff forward. But for the purposes of rebuttal, I think it's appropriate. And I'm just going to maintain that Christian school was never proposed before, after, or during mediation, or at any point for that matter, to my knowledge. So
the issue right now, Mr. Padilla, is the admission of that exhibit. So what's your response?
I don't have an objection to the court, viewing some literature on the Charlotte school per se.
Okay. The court will admit defendant's exhibit B, there being no objection.
So do you tell us why you believe that a private Christian-based school why are you proposing that? What is it that you believe it's good for your son?
Well, when I go there, I saw how caring the lady was. And when she told me about the size of the classroom, and there was her and one other teacher, their classroom was 8 or 9 students last year.
8 or 9 students, what, per teacher?
For the two of them.
For the 2 teachers?
Yes.
Okay. And did you think, what was about that made you?
Well, I knew right away that my son was going to have a lot more one-on-one interaction, have a better chance of learning. Because like I said, I felt that he'd gotten behind, and I did not want him to be in a big classroom, where my thinking is the smaller classroom, more attention, versus a bigger classroom where a teacher does not have as much time. I know when you get into the older ages, one teacher will teach many kids every day, but they only have that child for an hour. Where at this particular school, the same 2 teachers are going to be with this child all day.
Now, are you a member of the Adventist Christian Church?
No.
Is there anything in particular about the Adventist Christian religion that why you've chosen this particular school versus another school?
When I started researching private schools, the only one that I was finding were associated with religion or Christianity. And though their teachings are somewhat different than my Christian teachings, that was not, other than them praying at school, they were not there to indoctrinate their religion on you. So it's kind of a faith-based and spiritual school, but they're there to basically teach you your reading, your writing, your arithmetic.
Okay. So just so I understand what you're saying that it's not necessarily the religious base that drew you to this particular school. Or so private versus public. Or you tell them.
Could you ask me that again?
Yeah, I'm again. You're saying that you felt your testimony. I'm just trying to understand. Is it important that it's a Christian-based school, or is it important that this school focuses on the education?
Well, I like the fact that they're Christian. So, but it is the education too. It's not that he's going there just because it's religious.
Mm-hmm. Did you and Esther practice religion or regularly organized religion while the 2 of you lived together?
On and off, we go together. A lot of times she went by herself, with boys sometimes. And
Is your Christian faith important to you?
yes.
Do you have concerns about public schools in your area?
Basically only that they have a larger class size, and that David will not get the same amount of attention that I think that he would get here at the private school.
Are there any specific values or principles or beliefs that you believe are upheld by the private school versus the public school that resonate with you?
Well, only that well, obviously there is not a spiritual or Christianity type. Well, that's pretty much shunned in public schools, and just felt that that being a Christian school, that it would be a warmer and let's see, I don't know, more of a family warmth that he could get from the school.
Now, this school in particular, is it K through 12? Is it what are the?
It's K through 8th grade.
And so, what do you think the long-term benefits may be for David to go to this school versus a public school?
Well, my feelings is that he has a better chance to build a stronger foundation in his early years. So that as he's progressing through school, he's just not getting pushed through. I'm not saying that all public schools do that, but you hear about it. And if he has a stronger base, because he's able to get more time with the teacher, when he moves to the upper grades, I feel that he won't be stumbling backwards, because at some point maybe he wasn't able to keep up with the public schools because maybe they didn't know how to get in tune with how he learns, whether it's a visual, audio, or whatever. And like I say, teachers can look at a child, and if they only have a lot, they can take different learning steps that work with that child. But if you're in a class where you got 27, 28 kids, you cannot have an individual type, we say.
Okay. All right. I think you made your point here. Is there a cost involved to this school?
Yes, there is.
And are you prepared to pay that cost?
Yes.
Do you know what that cost is?
The initial tuition fee is $400 a month.
And you're not asking for a contribution from Esther?
Not at all.
Do you know if that school provides for extracurricular activities where they may have that kind of exposure in the public schools? Do they also have that at this school?
Well, from what I can see, they even have musical stuff. For the advanced ages, they have computers. So I don't think that he's going to be missing out on anything that the public school wouldn't have. One thing that they do offer is that during good weather, they're able to take their class out to a nature center where it's not a hippie thing, but where they can be in the calmness and do lessons outdoors, weather permitting. So,
okay. And they have sports and other kind of organized activities there that you're aware of?
I don't believe they have any sports, no.
Okay.
I just felt that at some point, if David does want to do sports, then we would have to look into either organized sports or a school that would have sports. I mean, it's not out of the question.
Is it fair to say that you and Esther don't have very good communication about the school for your child? You haven't really had much to sit down and talk about it?
I would say it's fair.
Are you willing to do that?
Well, I've tried, but every time I saw the situation starting to get heated, it was just like, I know where this is going. So it was just back up. Normally the kids around, they want to sing.
Okay. Now, if the court said, I don't think that private school is, or this school in particular, or a Christian school is necessarily appropriate, would you be opposed to your son going to in the public schools?
Not necessarily.
You prefer, though, the private school.
Yes.
And do you believe that's in your son's best interest?
For his early years, yes.
And how far is your home from Charlotte Adventist Christian School?
Approximately 10 minutes.
Do you have any idea how far approximately that school would be from where Esther currently lives?
25 minutes, something like that.
Is it, do you know anything about the school that she's proposing, this Purdy Elementary?
I did do some research on it. I saw where she was saying how they got 5 stars, but that was a lot of people's comments, probably some parents. I tried to dig deeper into how they scored with their MAP. I think it's a MAP testing scores, and they was not making that available. So I was not able to see where they stood with the national average or even the state average.
How far is the Purdy School in Battle Creek from your residence?
I would suspect that it's somewhere around 30 minutes.
It's a little bit further. What is your primary opposition to the child going to school at Battle Creek Public School?
Well, look, it wouldn't be an issue if we both lived in Battle Creek, but we don't. And that's just more time getting him up earlier and being on the road all the time, you know?
But regardless of whether the child goes to Charlotte or Battle Creek, your son's going to spend time on the road, correct?
One way or another, yeah, unless somebody moves.
Yeah. Okay. Do you plan to move?
I've been at my place for 25 years. I'm not saying I'm dug in, but my son has spent the better part of his life there too. And he absolutely loves it there.
Are there any other reasons that you are opposed to your son going to school in the Battle Creek area? If not, you can say that. Is it primarily the distance that would be involved?
I want it to be the distance, but and I'm not saying my kid's an angel, but I do know that end of town is the worst crime area of Battle Creek, if not the worst, the second worst. So I know that the kids that are going to this school may not be coming from desirable families, and I don't particularly care for what he may encounter with other children and he think was normal just because that's what's going on.
Thanks. That's all I have, Judge.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Padal, any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. While you were offering some testimony, Mr. Fick, I was looking on maps, and I just want to clarify a couple things with you. So your testimony was you believe it was about a 10-minute drive to the Charlotte Adventist Christian School. Is that right?
From my home.
I looked it up, and it says 11 minutes from your house. Do you have any reason to think that's wrong?
What, a 1 minute difference?
Yeah.
I was just estimating.
Yes, sir. So you don't disagree with me then?
Between 11 minutes.
10, 11 minutes sounds good. Okay. I also looked up the distance from your house to Purdy Elementary School in Penfield. It says it's 38 minutes. So would you disagree with me that sounds about right? Well,
if that's what you Googled, I would have to take your word for it.
I believe your testimony was about 30 minutes. So I'm actually giving you a little bit of weight here with saying 38. You think that's fair?
Well, to tell you the truth, I really didn't Google it to see how far it was away from my home. But I did see, for the most part, the relationship between her home and that school. And I could see why she would choose that. Obviously.
Well, my point is, Mr. Fick, by my math, and lawyers aren't great at math, but that's a difference of 17 minutes. So in other words, if you were to get up in the morning and drive to a school to take your son to school, the difference between driving to Charlotte and driving to Penfield is a difference of 17 minutes. Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
Well, that looks like the math.
Yeah. And if we factor that up on a 2-week block, because you're week on, week off, we're talking about 2.8 hours out of your time in a 2-week block to transport this child to and from school on your days. Would you disagree with that?
Your Honor, hold on. Before we do that, I mean, assuming for the moment that the Google Maps is correct, and 38 minutes from his house to Purdy and 11 minutes, that's 27 minutes. I just need the record to be clear. It's not 17 minutes, it's 27 minutes.
Well, as Mr. Padal said, attorneys are not good at math, so.
And I may be off by 10 minutes there. We're not good at math. So, but even still, so that maybe adds, on a 5-day week, less than an hour. So instead of 2.8 hours, we're talking about 3.5 hours in a 2-week block of extra driving time. It's not like some huge number. Would you agree with that?
I disagree with that, because you're talking about a one-way trip. And if I had to take my son there, I would have to take him in, drop him off, drive home. When he gets out of school, I have to drive there, pick him up, and drive home. So your numbers are only a quarter of what they should be.
But no, they're not, Mr. Fick. So, and either way, right, this child's going to be on the road. If the child goes to Charlotte, mom's going to have to make some transportation arrangements as well. I think your attorney pointed that out. Is that correct?
Well, you did, yes.
You said you weren't a member of the Calhoun or of the Adventist Church. But you said you are a Christian. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you have a particular Christian-based faith that you attend regularly or irregularly? Are you?
You're talking about a church that I frequent?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And what type of church is that?
That's a Baptist church.
Okay. How familiar are you with the Adventist Church?
You know, for the most part, there's not a whole lot of difference other than that they worship on Saturdays other than Sundays.
So you would consider the fact that the Adventist Church, the fact that they have their own prophets that no other religion recognizes, not a big difference?
Look, if they're not pushing it on my son, prayer is okay. That
doesn't answer my question, Mr.
Okay.
Fitt.
State it again, please.
So would you characterize the fact that the Adventist Church having their own prophets that no other religion recognizes, not a big deal in terms of Christian-based faith?
If they're not pushing it on my child.
But they're their prophets. How do you not teach those teachings? I'll withdraw you.
Okay.
You don't have to answer. Mr. Fick, you said, and I quote, you don't speed when you drive.
Okay.
Is that true?
Well, it's not like I haven't had a speeding ticket in my life.
Okay. You ever had a ticket for reckless driving?
Maybe my last ticket might have been considered that. It was speeding. I was driving a truck, and I think I was doing 45 and a 30 in somewhere down around Adrian, Michigan.
Isn't it true, Mr. Fick, that you got into an argument with your wife before you guys separated and that you drove recklessly in the car and scared the bejesus out of her?
Not necessarily true. You only got half of it. Yeah.
I'm asking you if you drove reckless in the car with your wife and your son.
If you want to look at it being reckless, she obviously didn't see the child that was running across the field. It caught my eye. I drove a truck, so you have to be safe as much as possible. When you see something like that and it catches your attention, yes, the car did bump the curb.
Okay. Did you slam on the brakes?
When she started, we moved on from there, and then she started getting in my face, and that's
Mr.
when
Fick,
I stopped the car. And if you're going for the car seat that she failed to buckle down, yes, the car seat did go flying into the back of the seat, and David was in it. She put him in that car seat.
By chance, Mr. Fick, ever look into Calhoun Christian School? I think they're like more of a Baptist faith school.
No.
Okay. You testified you didn't know that your spouse was leaving when she left you.
That's correct.
Okay. Isn't it true that you raised your hand to your wife in the past, and that you have become what we will characterize as threatening to be violent, and that your spouse left because she was afraid?
No, we only rose arms once.
Hold on, Mr. Fick. Either you can say no, you don't believe that's true, and that's fine, but I don't need an explanation, okay? So you would disagree with that?
I disagree is the way that you're presenting it.
Okay. So you haven't threatened to become physical with your spouse?
No, no more than what she has to me.
Never raised your hand to your spouse?
Never touched her.
That's not what I asked you. I said, did you raise your hand?
Only one time was hands risen. She raised hers. I raised mine at the same time.
You would agree that if one spouse was leaving another, and that was an interaction between those two before, that, one of the parties may just kind of decide to dip out and not tell the other one for fear that it might escalate to something physical. That seems pretty reasonable, right?
No, absolutely not.
No. Okay. I do want to just retouch base again really quick, Mr. Fick, and I appreciate your patience and I appreciate your candidness in answering these questions. You live in Eaton Rapids, and when I did and I apologize, I just want to clear the record on this for distance. So I show that the Purdy Elementary School in Battle Creek is a 38-minute drive, and the school in Charlotte, the Christian school, is 11 minutes. So that is a difference of 27, okay, not 17 minutes. And you don't disagree with that?
I don't know. I can't see the computer you're looking at.
Okay. Based on, you've traveled to Battle Creek before, yeah?
Yes, I have.
And you've traveled to the school in Charlotte, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. And would you say that those times are relatively consistent with what you've experienced?
I don't understand your question.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe, based on personal experience, that I'm exaggerating the times between these two places?
I don't think that you're presenting it honestly, is what I think.
What I'm saying is
you're not taking into the consideration that somebody has to drive back and forth, back and forth. That's 4 runs, not just one.
And I understand that. So that's 27 minutes each way extra. So that's a total of an hour a day, yeah? Actually, a little less than an hour.
Well, if it's 27 minutes both ways, you're at 54 minutes. That's 6 minutes less than an hour.
Yeah. And
so
I give you
2 hours worth of driving a day.
No, that's 1 hour extra a day. 27 minutes each way is 1 hour a day extra.
All right, Judge, I'm going to object. This is argumentative. He's answered it that it's 2 hours because it's actually 4 trips. And he's asking to answer that question.
I don't know how it's 4 trips, but in either case.
I've taken the testimony, so court will again have that testimony.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. You indicated that you have a Social Security income of $1,700. How much do you receive for David on Social Security in addition to that $1,700?
I believe it's $1,206.
And you testified that you've been putting that money in savings?
Yes.
With the exception of some money you're using for a tutor?
Correct.
And you said you've got a 401k that you draw on that you've got in, you said you've got it in savings. So is it not a 401k anymore?
No, it's not. I have approximately $25,000 still in a 401, but I pulled everything out approximately 2 years ago and put it in a savings.
Mr. Fick, you testified that you felt like your son was behind, or as if to say he was falling behind. I'd like you to elaborate on that a little bit, because we're talking about a 4-year-old who's now just turned 5. How exactly are you behind at that age? Do you mean developmentally behind?
Well, when I see other kids his age and they seem to be more advanced, knowing, say, 1 through 10 and A through Z, I would say maybe they're gifted. But on the same hand, I felt that some of these things, when she wasn't working, should have been taught to him so that he would have been further ahead. You got to remember, when I retired, it wasn't all over this schooling. It was because I could see that these children were being neglected. And a lot of it had to do with their learning.
Well, for 5 months, you guys maintained a household together after you retired. And your testimony was that you were the primary caregiver. So arguably, I can point the finger at you. Isn't that fair?
If you want to.
No.
I spent a lot of time watching her autistic kid, plus David. So I'm catching up on the household duties that had been abandoned for a long time. So it's not like, well, let's put it like this. Anytime David was around me, he was always learning something, whether it was the farming or whatever. He hadn't even developed totally on the conversation. I think I would.
Well, Mr. Fick, let me ask you this. I mean, what is your position on the fact that boys and girls and children as a whole just kind of develop at different rates. Would you say that's fair?
Oh yeah, sure. Why not? I know boys are different than girls, and I do know that some girls develop faster than other girls mentally. Same way with boys. I just felt that, look, Esther loves her phone. She loves her guitar. She loved her crafts. The kids got
hold on, Mr. Fick. Hold on.
You wanted to hear it. You get it.
What I'm asking you, what I asked you specifically, and I think you answered me, is children develop at a different rate, do they not?
They can develop a lot faster if the parent is working.
That's not what I asked you, Mr. Fick.
Okay.
We can have a long conversation
they
about that.
develop differently at different times.
Thank you. Your Honor, I don't have any further questions. Mr. Fick, thank you for your testimony. I know that I'm not a very nice person. Thank you.
That's okay.
Mr. Bailey, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Padal, any rebuttal?
Can I have a word with my client, Your Honor?
We'll put you in a breakout room.
Your Honor, I would like to recall my witness for a couple of rebuttal questions.
Okay.